Hello everyone, I'm Benjamin Cure. Welcome to the Benjamin Cure Show. I've got a special Friday edition for you. There were too many important stories. I didn't want to leave a single one out this week, so I planned for a Friday release. Sure enough, we've got some great breakdowns today. I will say, today is probably the show with the most opinions and breakdowns to date. You are getting all of my thoughts on every situation right now. The NBA, the NFL, UFC 276, the sport of boxing, and even tennis. I've also got some more special shout-outs at the end of the episode. No stone will be left unturned on today's show. You are getting the full Benjamin Cure experience. Everything that's been on my mind for the past week is on today's show. It is a must-watch from start to finish. So make sure if you can't listen to the full episode, listen to what you can now, but come back later. You don't want to miss any part of today's show. I will say, in our biggest stories, we've got a common theme. I'm talking a lot about relationships today. It's important, and yes, they exist in sports. Enough with the introductions, let's get to the sports commentary. To adjust the words of the great Billy Joel, in a golden state of mind. Kevin Durant seemed to be in a New York state of mind up until last week. Then, the Woj bomb dropped that Nets general manager Sean Marks was helping facilitate a trade. Earlier this week, it was reported that Kevin Durant could be headed back to Golden State if the offer was right. Now, we've heard from credible sources that the Brooklyn Nets prefer players over picks. They want something already proven, not a prospect, in return for one of the greatest scorers of all time. And rightfully so. With that knowledge, it's obvious that with the current reporting, the Golden State Warriors could definitely put together the best package. Jordan Poole, Andrew Wiggins, Jonathan Kuminga, James Wiseman, all of those guys are tradable. I'm not saying it would take all of them to get Kevin Durant, but if the Warriors pull the trigger on a trade, you're parting ways with at least half those guys that I named and a couple first-round picks. People like to give advice. Well, let me start by saying people love to vent, which in turn opens the opportunity for someone else to give you advice. What's some of the most common yet sought-after advice in life in general? Dating advice and the concept of romance could not be more popular today. I think dating advice is number one. We're constantly hearing about celebrity relationships. Friends are more open than ever with each other about their dating experiences and what's going on. There's even reality television shows with multi-million-dollar budgets that are dedicated to dating and romance. Universally, there's a piece of advice that people swear by in this arena. Whatever you do, no matter how great it seems on the other side, do not go back to your ex. It's one of the most famous pieces of dating advice. No matter how green the grass seems to be on the other side, do not fall in love with the idea of what was or what could be. It's a trap. It's a mess. Your conception of what that person is probably wrong. And you know this because they're your ex. You've already encountered whatever flaws they have. That's why they're your ex. You're no longer in a relationship with them. Now, people get back with their exes all the time. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But let me create this scenario for you. Let me paint this picture. Let's say we have two people dating. It was pretty solid from the start. There were high expectations, you got along great together, and the relationship was successful from the start. That 1-year anniversary was amazing. It was so great that you decided to put a ring on it. You put a ring on your partner's finger. You proposed, you got married. You had an excellent honeymoon phase that lasted another whole year. And then at the end of that, you renewed your vows at the end of year 2. Those first 2 years were spectacular. But for whatever reason, year 3 just wasn't for you guys. It didn't work out. Things happened that were out of your control. Unfortunately for the relationship, bitterness, frustration, jealousy, and anger started to seep in. By the end of year 3, it was over. You got a divorce. You both went your separate ways. You dated afterwards and thought some relationships would be great. You thought you could recreate what you had in that previous marriage. But for whatever reason, chemistry, communication, commitment, you realized that you were at your best in that first marriage. It was so great. How could you have left? So now you've officially decided to break things off with your current partner and put it all on the line. You want to return to your first marriage. And although you're not sure, your former partner may want you too. There may be mutual feelings there. It's all about communication and seeing if they still want to try and maybe get married again at the end of that year. Does that not seem like an absolute mess? If Kevin Durant's goal this entire time was to force his way back to the Golden State Warriors to put a ring on it at the end of the year, that is insane. That would validate everything that sports broadcasters have said over the course of the year. Does Kevin Durant regret leaving Stephen Curry and the Warriors to play with Kyrie and the Nets? If KD ends up back in the Bay, he's admitting, yes, I regret the way things ended. I want in. I want you back. I miss what we had. If you thought the Kevin Durant era in Golden State had a messy ending then, I can't imagine what his departure would look like after a second reunion. That first time around, the locker room animosity with Golden State's Draymond Green and even head coach Steve Kerr at the end of that run was such a fall from grace. You were watching it come to an end in those last couple months in every press conference. I don't know if it's worth it. As a matter of fact, I know it's not worth it. It is not worth it for the Golden State Warriors to sell their future for Kevin Durant when they just won a championship ring without him. And when they have an incredibly promising future ahead of them if they stick with those young guys. So let's forget about the fake situations and the examples. Let me tell you the facts and what would go down and what would need to go down for this deal to take place. Kevin Durant has 4 years left on his contract. The Brooklyn Nets have no incentive to move him right now unless they get an absolute monster of a deal. I said it last week on the show. The Kevin Durant deal would probably feature the largest trade package in NBA history, or at least one of. And at the time that I said that, the Rudy Gobert trade hadn't even gone through. Remember, not long after the Sean Marks is helping KD with a trade story dropped, the Utah Jazz traded away Rudy Gobert to the Minnesota Timberwolves in exchange for not only players, but 4 first-round picks. If you think Rudy Gobert is worth that much, what's the asking price for KD? The Nets saw that deal go down and definitely upped their demands to move KD. That Rudy Gobert deal kind of screwed up the KD market. Because right now, you can't get KD for anything less than 2 stars and at least 4 first-rounders. And that's evident because just last night it got leaked that they were looking to move him to the Minnesota Timberwolves, as a matter of fact. And the Minnesota Timberwolves denied it. It included Cat, it included Anthony Edwards and 4 first-rounders. They said no. I would have said no as well. I'm not giving away those guys for Kevin Durant for the remaining years of his prime. So, in order to accomplish a trade of that magnitude, you probably can't do a 2-team trade. That's the other problem in this. No, this got a lot more complicated. In order to complete this transaction, you may have to have 3 or even 4 teams involved in the trade. Call me crazy, it just depends on what the deliverables end up being. The Brooklyn Nets could very easily argue they want 3 stars and 5 first-rounders out of this. I get it. If Brooklyn's blowing up the whole thing, they've got to get a future in return. I don't mean just any future. I mean they need their whole future. The Nets have to be able to walk away from the KD trade saying, we got all the assets we need to be successful in the future. Not, we're still missing pieces. No. There's no room for that. If there's room for that, then you messed up. For those reasons, while there may be a massive interest in trading for Kevin Durant, there is a very, very quiet market. I've got to say, the Utah Jazz are definitely patting themselves on the back right now. The front office and the ownership are looking around saying, hey, look at us. We know how to steer this ship. We know how to navigate this league. I mean, seriously, that Rudy Gobert transaction is a once-in-a-franchise deal. You do not pass up on that. I get why they let Rudy Gobert walk. I don't mind losing Rudy Gobert. If I was that GM, I can get 70% of the rim protector and the defender that he is for a fraction of the cost. Because if Utah would have kept him, they'd be paying a premium multi-year extension. And with the direction the league is headed in, once again, we're talking about the future, that's not the position that you want your money locked up in. At this point, I want to hear from you. Comment your take. I want your dating advice. Should Kevin Durant return to the Warriors? And more importantly, will he? Speaking of a team that pulled the trigger, the Cleveland Browns traded away Baker Mayfield to the Carolina Panthers in exchange for a conditional fifth round pick. That has got to be one of the biggest drop-offs I have ever seen. From a number 1 overall to a conditional fifth rounder, that was a quiet Baker Mayfield market. It was practically silent. That shows that the Cleveland Browns' relationship with Baker was awful. It may have been even worse than we thought, and we thought it was pretty bad. I told you that on today's show, you're getting the full Benjamin Cure experience, and sometimes that means that I passionately disagree with my favorite sports broadcasters. There's a lot of talk that there will be a quarterback battle in Carolina. Some of the best guys in the industry are saying that it's a toss-up, that Sam Darnold will most likely, after that battle, play the quarterback position for at least the first 2 to 3 weeks of the regular season. They're also saying that there's no chance that Baker Mayfield can be the clear starter by week 1. I could not disagree more with that idea. The Carolina Panthers felt the need to trade away a fifth rounder, a conditional fifth rounder, to Cleveland for Baker Mayfield. That means they don't like what they see in Sam Darnold. If he's really worth that little, then you know there's a problem. They've already had Sam Darnold in the building for over a year. It's not some guy they just drafted or traded for or they're looking for upside in. They know what he has. They know what he's capable of on the field. Maybe more importantly, they know what he's not capable of. They know his limitations. They know what he can't do for them. So if we're talking about a franchise that is looking for upside at the quarterback position, knowing what they already have, that they're probably not satisfied, Baker Mayfield is the obvious choice. And they may not make it known to the public, but they know Baker Mayfield is starting week 1. By the way, to add to the narrative, guess who the Panthers play week 1? That's right, the Cleveland Browns. You'd be a fool to not be aware of that narrative. Baker Mayfield is starting against his former team in week 1 of the NFL season. Big time week 1 draw. Lots of fans will be interested in that, even beyond the fan bases. But this idea that it's a 50-50, that Carolina's going to have a quarterback battle on their hands, before the guys even walk into the building, Baker Mayfield is QB1. He's the better option. I don't buy for a second the Panthers brought in Baker to play second fiddle to Sam Darnold. If they even thought that there was a possibility that Baker wouldn't be good enough to prove that he's their starter, they wouldn't have traded for him. Period. Now, some of you may be talking at your screen or even screaming at it right now. Ben, you're wrong. They got Baker for just a 5th round conditional. He's dirt cheap, and they only have to pay him $5 million of his salary. That's backup money. Listen, we all know that Baker Mayfield is way more than a roster spot and someone on your payroll. If Baker Mayfield is on your roster, you also are inheriting the personality, a polarizing figure in the NFL, someone who splits up fan bases. You're not bringing in that headstrong persona that is Baker Mayfield as a backup or to play a part in a quarterback battle during training camp. Baker Mayfield is not there to make Sam Darnold feel better about himself. International Fight Week was subject to one of the best cards of the year, UFC 276, Adesanya versus Cannonier, and the co-main, Volkanovski versus Holloway 3. The card was stacked from top to bottom, and I enjoyed the prelims. I really did enjoy these prelim fights. I even got to watch some of the early prelims, which I believe started just after noon Eastern time. Although they kicked off in a violent fashion, it was a solid card. Before we proceed, you can call me Mystic Mac because I predict these things. I participated in the ESPN Pick'ems for UFC 276, and I went 7 wins and just 1 loss. Yes, I just got 1 bout wrong the entire afternoon. Before you call cap, or that it's a lie, I've got the receipts. Quick context, the reason my record was 7-1 is because I never clicked submit on my picks after I made them. So when I checked the ESPN app during the broadcast, I realized I was late and I couldn't submit my picks for the fights that had already passed. But it's okay because I knew I still had plenty of confidence in my remaining picks, and I've got it on my phone. So I'm going to show it to you. And if anything, Ben, remember to crop and zoom. So this is the email that I got directly from ESPN Pick'ems. You can see it's to Benjamin Cure, right? And see 7-1. So the only reason I wasn't ranked higher in a higher percentile was because I didn't pick those earlier fights. Now, let me open up the ESPN app, and I'm going to show you guys who my picks were and who I got wrong, unfortunately. So, UFC fan, because the generic account. So, 7-1. Let's see what I got right and what I got wrong. So, first up, the first one that I got to pick was very obvious. Ian Gary. I'll get into that afterwards. Then we went Brad. I picked him. He ended up losing. Jim Miller. I picked him, although it hurt my heart, and I'll explain why after, especially with the result. I picked Jalen Turner. I thought that was an obvious pick. Sean O'Malley. They ended up calling that one null and void, so I didn't get marked right or wrong for that. And then Brian Barberena, Alex Pereira, Alexander Volkanovski, Israel Adesanya. So, forget the phone. Let's kick it off with the actual fights. Ian Gary proved that he didn't need to land a big hit to win a fight. He can methodically break down an opponent over time. He can fight all the way to a judge's decision and still win comfortably. And while we know Ian for his power, he's continuing to showcase his abilities as a precision striker. That's a skill that will prove to be increasingly valuable as he takes on tougher competition. He's a surgeon. Who are guys that we know right now that are surgeons, who are precision strikers? Off the top of my head, Izzy and Usman. Certainly not bad company to be in. It's a good skill to have. Heading into the final fight before the pay-per-view, Donald Cowboy Cerrone ended the bout with a loss. Joe Rogan entered the octagon to interview the winner, Jim Miller, but Miller, being the true brother that he is, told Rogan to talk to Cowboy first. He said, hey, I think he's got some business to take care of. In the corner of the camera, you could see what was going on, and it was heartbreaking. Cowboy Cerrone took off his gloves and put them in his cowboy hat in the center of the octagon and called it a career. T-Mobile Arena erupted upon seeing this. Joe Rogan said almost longingly, Donald, are we doing this right now? It's almost like he felt it. He felt the end. Cowboy said he was done. He didn't love it anymore. He wants to be a dad. He wants to be a movie star. I saw this coming. I was talking to friends, family, fight fans. I may have even said it on Twitter. Cowboy does not love MMA anymore. I had been saying that well before he said it. He did not love the press conference anymore, the preparation, the training camp, the media moments, the weigh-ins, the actual fight. His heart wasn't in it, and it was pretty evident. I have a tremendous amount of respect for that. It's not easy for an athlete, especially a fighter, to admit that the passion and the drive just isn't there anymore. And I'll be honest, there were so many great fights and matchups on this card besides Cerrone Miller that I never thought far enough ahead about Cowboy's attitude. I acknowledged all week, oh, his heart's not in it anymore. It's just not for him. But with so much going on, I never connected point A to B. I did not allow myself to get far enough to say, oh, he clearly doesn't love it anymore. This is the end of the line. Donald Cerrone is going to retire after this fight. So when he did, at the end of the ESPN telecast, the air left my chest. I gasped. I couldn't believe it. It felt surreal. It felt like the end of a great book series or a movie franchise. It came to a close. I didn't consider this after Joanna retired just about a month ago, but I can definitely sit back right now and say, to me, this marks the beginning of the end. No, not the end of MMA, not the UFC. The sport will be around for a long time. It's finally becoming a mainstream sport with billions of dollars behind it. But it does mark the beginning of the end of an era and a start of the new age of MMA. We're not that far away from seeing legends that we loved watching like John Jones and Stipe Miocic eventually hanging up the towel or putting their gloves in the middle of the octagon. MMA is awesome. It's a true test of preparation, mental fortitude, and just a will to win. While it's a sport, it's no game. You can't be an elite fighter forever. There's too much punishment involved. So if you take only one thing from Cerrone's retirement, learn to enjoy legends while they're still competing. Because one day they won't. Moving on from this mildly sentimental story, let's focus on the main card bouts. Sean Strickland got knocked out by Alex Pereira. I don't know why so many people picked Sean Strickland, maybe because he was a fan favorite or they liked his attitude. Alex Pereira is a killer. That was like the most for sure pick I made the entire night. Besides maybe Izzy and Volk, who I'll get to next. His bag is so deep. He takes it just so much more seriously than Sean Strickland. And people may criticize me for that, but I think it's true. And I think it's kind of obvious. Your truth was written on the wall before the fight even began. Pereira is the real deal. It's the obvious pick to make. He will probably get the next title shot against Israel Adesanya. There's no question here as to who, but when. Adesanya versus Pereira will probably take place late, and I mean late, 2023. Probably like a December card. Or at least, I guess early 2023. Unless unforeseen circumstances appear, I don't see Izzy not fighting until next April or next March. That's too far away. Too much time in between title defenses. It probably wouldn't be good for him either. Since I'm already talking about him, might as well talk about the main event, Adesanya versus Cannonier. I really appreciated and loved Cannonier's composure. If someone beats Israel Adesanya in the middleweight division, it will be someone with Jared Cannonier's mentality. You're not going to outdo Israel Adesanya. You're not going to get into his head. No one on the current roster can do that. Izzy's just too in tune with himself and the game. He understands better than anybody else except for Conor McGregor the production and the entertainment component of the industry. He gets it too well to let it get to him. So in that sense, Jared Cannonier was very impressive. But unfortunately for Cannonier, he entered the octagon against the greatest middleweight of all time. Izzy is the best. Try to debate the irrefutable evidence. He's unstoppable in the cage, a total personality outside the octagon. He's displayed dominance even as a champ. As an added bonus, by the way, he's never popped for PEDs. He just got that jacket saying that he got 50 past USADA record tests. He's got a clean USADA record. He's perfectly fine. There's no stain on his legacy as a middleweight. The one, and I don't even want to say blemish, it's like the one fingerprint on Izzy's career is that Alex Pereira owns the only combat sports KO of Israel Adesanya. And that is a great storyline for their next fight together, which is probably the middleweight title fight. Finally, my personal favorite of the card, Alexander the Great Volkanovski. There is no one in the featherweight division capable of beating Volk. Not a soul. That's not a question. He owns the entire division, and everyone who has tried to challenge him for the title has been violently turned down. Volk is the greatest featherweight of all time. No, this is not recency bias talking. Volk is the featherweight GOAT. He is levels above everyone else. That's why when Max Holloway was creating all that buzz and all that noise that he made at the press conference, I knew it was for show. Max couldn't do anything more to beat Volk. It's not a knock on Max. He simply is not as good because right now no one is. Volk is on a different level. I said that after his last fight when he demolished a promising UFC fighter in the Korean Zombie. And these things will probably only add to the aura of Alexander Volkanovski's greatness. If that beating was so bad that the Korean Zombie never looks the same, Volk will be seen as the guy who changed his career forever, the one who ruined it forever. And if the Korean Zombie comes back and never loses again, it'll show the world how dominant Volk was. So what's next for Alexander the Great Volkanovski? The only reason I cannot promise that he will face Charles Oliveira for the lightweight belt is because of Conor McGregor. In combat sports, Conor McGregor runs the show. If he wants to walk into a lightweight title shot, he will get what he wants. The company will make sure of that. I've seen some people question online, why would the UFC help Conor facilitate a title shot? Why would the UFC want that? Apparently, you don't know the UFC. Although unlikely, let me paint this picture for you. If Conor McGregor were to beat Charles do Bronx Oliveira for the vacant title, Conor McGregor being the current UFC lightweight champion would explode the promotion to new heights. MMA is doing incredibly well right now. TV money, sponsors, becoming a mainstream sport. But a Conor McGregor championship run at this stage in the game, at this stage in his career, would be an absolute lottery ticket for the UFC. The press, the business, the endorsements, the TV time, the fan base would go absolutely nuts to see Conor McGregor back on top. So for that reason, Alexander Volkanovski may not get his wish granted. At least not right away. You may not like it, but even when he's not in the cage, this sport revolves around Conor McGregor. And they're running on his schedule for as long as he plans on fighting. Speaking of fighting, the fight is off. Oh, who could have predicted that? Jake Paul will not face Tommy Fury on August 6th in Madison Square Garden. Jake Paul sent an announcement earlier this week to the world that he had sent a termination notice to Fury and his team. And yesterday, he announced his new opponent, Asim Rahman Jr., a professional boxer with a 12-1 record. But Rahman Jr. has way more reps than just 13 professional fights. You may have noticed how I'm saying Junior. Yes, Asim Rahman Jr. is the son of Asim Rahman, former two-time world heavyweight champion. The father held the unified WBC, IBF, IBO, and lineal titles in 2001, and the WBC title again from 2005 to 2006. So a championship reign there for sure within the family. So he grew up around boxing. Asim Rahman Jr. is way more impressive than Tommy Fury. Not only does he have more professional fights and wins on his record, Asim Rahman Jr. also has competed in over 100 amateur boxing matches. For those of you wondering, that's 10 times more than Tommy Fury. Yeah, he's tougher. Tommy Fury was and is absolutely terrified to step into the ring with Jake Paul. If I haven't been critical enough of him, today's that day. I got a lot of replies on Instagram and Twitter yesterday from people who was saying that I was being unfair towards Tommy Fury. I was unfair to criticize him. He couldn't enter the country. I almost never respond to comments, but I almost did. Because the narrative is ridiculous. But my response would have been so long that I would have simply been wasting my time. I could be doing way more productive things than drafting a response for a comment section. But on my show, I've got all the time in the world. I run this ship. So first of all, Tommy Fury was in the United States in May. For those of you who don't know, shocker. He has a post on his Instagram feed that I am in shock he is not embarrassed to take down with the Hollywood sign behind him in Los Angeles, California. His girlfriend, who is a social media superstar in the UK, posted pictures of her and Tommy together in the US from May 7th to May 12th. They even went to Universal Studios in Anaheim, California. They were on a multi-day trip to the United States, and they made it known to the world. And now he's being denied entry to the country? Yeah, I did throw up air quotes. We may not acknowledge or understand it in the US, but Tommy Fury has quite the name in the United Kingdom. You're going to see why I was throwing up the air quotes in just a bit. He's a popular fella. He's popular with men because of his older brother and his own journey into boxing. So he's got a sporting audience. That's one division right there. He's also popular with women because of reality television and his good looks. Because of that, he has an audience from the entertainment industry. So two big-time industries that he has garnered attention in. This guy is not some social media celebrity in the UK. He is an actual celebrity. He gets paparazzi'd all the time. But you mean to tell me that not a single photograph was captured of Tommy Fury when he went to the airport and was denied entry to the United States? Not a single camera? Not a single iPhone? Not a single fan or fangirl or fanboy got a snapshot of that celeb? It is not a stretch to say that Tommy Fury may have never gone to the airport and that he never may have even been denied entrance to the United States. Why would he do that, Ben? Because he is absolutely terrified of Jake Paul. Notice how I'm not saying fighting Jake Paul. Notice that I'm not saying the attention. He's terrified of Jake Paul, of every component of him. He's scared of the social media shenanigans that Jake Paul is capable of and will conduct leading up to the fight, because Jake Paul is undefeated on social media. He is terrified of getting knocked out and embarrassed by Jake Paul. And he's even more terrified of the aftermath, the overwhelming response, the criticism, and downright clowning from the entire world if a professional boxer like himself loses to Jake Paul. And the ultimate fear? What will his father John and his brother Tyson Fury do to him if he loses? How will they treat him? Tyson Fury said in a not kidding manner in an interview that he would disown Tommy Fury if he lost to Jake Paul. He said that during the build-up to their first scheduled bout. But I'm a fair guy. I will give a man the benefit of the doubt. Let's say Tommy Fury was denied entrance to the United States. Boxers and actual fighters in general have problems with their visas all of the time. They get it resolved within 2 to 3 days. And I'm not talking about superstars. I'm not talking about Conor McGregor. Not talking about Floyd Mayweather or Manny Pacquiao. All of these fighters who are not superstars or big-time celebrities outside the ring or cage, they go through the process. But Tommy Fury is not just any no-name fighter. We will give him credit on this show. His family name has big-time pull in the United Kingdom and, truthfully, across the world. If Tyson or John or maybe even Tommy Fury himself made a couple calls Tommy Fury would be brought to the United States on a private jet, and upon landing, he would shake hands with the head of Homeland Security, who would then lead him to a group of security personnel who would drive Tommy Fury in a motorcade to from LaGuardia Airport to New York City to Madison Square Garden. That's the kind of treatment that he gets if he puts in some effort. Yeah, he's that guy. That's the kind of resolution that he could accomplish. Where there's a will, there's a way. Tommy Fury's supposed injury in that first fight was never confirmed. And we may never know if Tommy Fury even showed up to the airport in June. I'll only say one more thing on the Tommy Fury versus Jake Paul subject. If Tommy Fury listens to this and believes that I have been unfair with my perspective, that I have treated him unfairly, I would gladly invite you to state your case on the show. Virtual interview, in person, whatever you want. You can put the speculation to bed. I would absolutely be willing and understanding to let you share what's transpired, what has gone on behind the scenes. You can tell your full story on the show. But for now, my conclusion, Benjamin Kier's conclusion, is my conclusion. It will not change unless there is adequate proof to dispute it. Moving on to the actual bout, there will be a pay-per-view test for Jake this time around. It'll be probably his biggest test, actually, not necessarily inside the ring. The promotion is going to rely heavily on Paul and Showtime's ability to sell. I need this excitement and this competition and this grudge. That's what they need. It's fun. They've already done a good job of showcasing this. As a matter of fact, Jake Paul has already proven in this bout what he's capable of promotion-wise, and people haven't even realized this yet. Asim Rahman Jr., as Jake Paul's opponent, got leaked quite a bit before Jake's official announcement, just under 48 hours before. So a slight amount of fans, like hardcore fans that were Googling it, actually knew about Rahman Jr. I was one of them. I'll admit that. I took it upon myself to check Rahman Jr.'s social media before the fight was announced. I found his Instagram, and I was honestly surprised, and not for good reasons. For someone of Jr.'s commitment and his level of commitment and proven ability, he had almost a non-existent social media following. This is what Jake talks about, that fighters don't promote themselves enough, they don't do themselves justice. He had just over 5,000 followers. It was like 5,800, which for a normal person is a lot, but for a fighter, for the son of a heavyweight champ, now that was just under 48 hours before Jake's official announcement. But 24 hours after the official announcement, right now, after the media push and after a tag from Jake Paul, Asim Rahman Jr. has just over 8,000 likes on his last post. 8,000 likes. And since the announcement, Asim Rahman Jr. has amassed 250,000 followers on Instagram. After being tagged by Jake Paul in a post. That is Jake Paul's superpower. His promotional ability is a well-oiled machine that has been perfected over the course of 9 years since he started on Vine in 2013. The press conference is Tuesday, August 12th. I couldn't be more excited. I'm going to be watching live. It's going to be live at Madison Square Garden. You'll probably be able to stream it. Stay tuned to Jake Paul's social media along with Showtime for more updates on the bout. In a truly shocking turn of events, Rafael Nadal has withdrawn from Wimbledon ahead of his semifinal match with a torn abdominal muscle. This is just awful. As many tennis fans know, Rafa had just left it all on the court in a match with United States tennis product Taylor Fitz. Early on and even throughout, Taylor Fitz conducted a masterclass, and it pains me to say that. He was outclassing Rafael Nadal. Nadal proved once again why he is one of the greatest tennis players of all time, and why his competitive nature is the most elite in the world. Even at 36 years old, you can come very close to beating Rafael Nadal, but you will not succeed. The 22-time major champion was determined to claw his way back to a win, and ultimately, he beat Taylor Fitz in spectacular fashion. Fans were excited to see Rafa move on to the next match, because it was very evident that if he won that match, he would probably win the whole thing. That persistence was unbeatable. Nadal was going to win Wimbledon. But the injury, this is not really that surprising. You saw it afterwards if you watched him. As much as I want to say it came out of nowhere, this was kind of bound to happen. Rafael Nadal's biggest enemy the past week is himself. Nadal exerted so much energy, every ounce of energy from his body, every ounce of athleticism, passion, drive. from his body to pull out of that Fitz match with a win. It really did take everything out of him to win that match. Although it'll be an incredible win on his resume, something he can add to his highlight tape, another incredible, almost unbelievable story, it will probably forever haunt him. At 36, he could have won Wimbledon, but his effort and his persistence to ultimately win that single match is the reason why he's not able to compete. He overextended himself. And on his journey to the top, he gave it just a little bit too much. He gave it all he had. But that's what the greats do. I really do hope that Rafa can bounce back and that we can see him in great competitive fashion sometime soon. Get well soon, Rafa. Now, it's that time. We've got some shout-outs to close out today's episode. I told you all on last week's show, at the very end, Inter Miami CF's U15 Academy team would be competing for the MLS Next Cup. I'm very happy to report that they won in spectacular fashion. 2-1, great win. It was so awesome to watch them celebrate. It was a live broadcasted game, prime time. They are now league champions, and they've been celebrating ever since they returned to Miami. Congratulations to them. There is truly no harder working group in MLS Next, and they deserve all the success that comes their way. Quick note, I am so incredibly invested in this show in more ways than one. I love what we've built. I'm always looking to improve it. So in the coming weeks, expect to see some new production perks. The episodes might look a little bit different, clearer, brighter, more colorful. And I do all of that in an effort to make sure that this show is more enjoyable for you guys. Before we conclude, make sure to like and subscribe so YouTube pushes this show to other sports fans. It's my goal to share my sports take with every sports fan in the world. Anybody who will listen, I'm here to give you my take. As an audience, you guys make that possible, so I thank you so much. Please make sure to engage, share this with your friends, text them the link, even if it's just in a group chat. Until next week, I'm Benjamin Cure. You're watching The Benjamin Cure Show. Have a great weekend, everyone.